All right, so this is the theme of my talk, and I like to start off with the subtitle is "Why you no give me 1.0?" And when I say that, I guess I'm just really talking about how do we stabilize something that is by definition unstable, right? How many people are familiar with semver? A little bit. Heard of it? That is way too few of you. That is unacceptable. Semver.org, you all have laptops right now. Because the fact that it is 0.4.0 means that it is unstable. Anything can change at any time. The fact that we have, stable releases and unstable releases is just something nice that Rye does for us. But it could just change at any time. And so how do you deal with that? It's actually a complicated problem. Let's start kind of small. A couple of, caveats that I've seen in terms of code usage that comes up on the mailing list a lot, and things that you should just generally not do, right? Or should do, and just do them right. So this is a great example, right? Like, oh, if something goes wrong, I want to know about it. I want to say, hey, we're just going to log that error. I think that's been a common theme overall today is logging. But the problem here is that you're not exiting the process, right? It's just like, oh yeah, Node did something wrong, and it'll probably work itself out. No, it is not going to work itself out. You need to say, stop, exit time, restart the process. All right, let everything reset. It's important. Remember this. And so you really need to listen for these errors. And this is actually from the docs. I mean, how many people have seen this snippet of code? You all should be raising your hands. OK, that's sad. But it's all right. I'll forgive you. The thing is that there's actually sort of a sneaky error that's not trapped here. And you would probably see this in your code if you use this in production. And the reason for that is that the underlying socket can throw errors. And that error will be bubbled up to the request. And so I will give a Node.js beta account to the first person who changed the doc usage to this, which is that you should have the error event handler there. And if you don't believe me why, I have the source code line cited. So I'm not kidding. And these are just sneaky things, right? I think, I forgot who said it today, but it just said, assume you're fucked. And that's totally true. Like, you never know what's going to go on. I've seen Rye and Matt Rainey debugging this SSL error all week. And like, you just never know. The socket could just be like, oh, the kernel just decided to panic. It's not Node's fault, but you got to handle it. Next big one is event emitters. I mean, evented programming is great, but it's really dangerous. And we've seen this pop up a few times in a library that we have written and maintained for the last year called Node HTTP proxy. That's a pretty full-featured reverse proxy in Node, kind of like the sweet spot for fast asynchronous I/O. But the problem with that is that if you start listening to events and don't remove those listeners, eventually you're going to have some leaks, and that's not good, right? Thankfully, Node will warn you about this, so maybe you'll see something like this. And by the way, this is fixed, so don't be afraid. And you should also upgrade to 5x. So let's say we had some code like this, right? You want to do something and then notify the person that you're done. Normal, naive approach would just say, OK, when I'm done, call this function. But why are you using .on, right? Event cardinality is important. If you're only expecting one done event, then only do this once, right? And this gets important when you start to think about closure scope. Because if you're using something in the scope of the callback, and that event emitter, that event handler, is never removed, then that can never be freed, because it still needs to be kept around to maybe be used in that function that will never be called later on, right? I'm seeing a lot of blank stares. I'm hoping this gets through. Maybe not. Use a process monitor. I think most people do this, probably monitor upstart. I wrote this thing called Forever that people use, I hope. I use it. And you just start it, and when your app crashes, you can restart it. And that's why that first slide that I showed, where you just eagerly exit the process, makes sense. Because it's like, it's not a big deal, we're just going to restart. You probably have your application state serialized to some sort of remote database like Redis, or a file maybe if you're not feeling that adventurous. And just do it. And stabilize your dependencies. And this is a great topic. This has come up a couple of times today. I know Isaac talked about it. And this is kind of the power of NodeConf. This is stuff that I learned in the last 48 hours. Like, I've actually been doing this wrong for the last year up until 2 days ago. And the reason that you want to stabilize your dependencies is so you don't see things like this. So, okay, I have it installed on my local machine, and then I push to production, and whoops, I forgot to put it in my package.json, and okay, whoops, okay, now it's not installed on my production box, and you start it up with forever, and all of a sudden you see it spin restarting because you just don't have that module installed. And this local installation doesn't solve this, because the workflow that I see from a lot of people is they will say, hey, I'm going to require this module. I'm going to try and run my program. Oh, my program doesn't run. I'm not going to do the smart thing and go update my package.json and then use npm install to install it from there. I'm just going to do npm install package name and not update the relative dependencies in my package.json. And that's exactly why we wrote this tool. And so what this will do is it'll spawn up your child process for your application, figure out what the dependencies are, and update them for you. So this one's actually pretty neat, pretty useful. But there's actually one problem with this, and it's a problem that I found in the last 48 hours. And that happens to be the dependencies that have been listed here. And I'm not even going to ask for a show of hands here, because I didn't even know for 2 days ago. So the problem here is that I'm being really, really conservative. And for an ecosystem that moves as fast as the Node.js community, you can't be this conservative. I'm saying I only want 0.0.3. That's it. Nothing greater than that, nothing less than that. It has to be that version. Alternatively, you could be really, really optimistic and say anything greater than or equal to 0.0.3. Neither of those are a really good middle ground, because you need to figure out what semantic versioning really means. And so let's take a look at this. This is the incorrect way that I have done this on every single one of my modules, or not necessarily incorrect, just overly optimistic. And so, if one of these gets updated to say hits a 1.0 and there's a breaking API change in here, you're not going to know. If you're going to deploy to production and have 5 or 6 application servers running that may have been started up at different periods of time, they may have different versions of that dependency installed on each server if you do this. And that's really dangerous, because you're like, oh, I have 6 servers and now 1 in 6 connections is failing and I don't know why. And I'm just going to log into the first server I feel like and say, oh, the dependency is installed here in the correct one. It's just not that easy. What you should be doing is this. I was doing it wrong. TM. You should be doing this. The X indicates that you will accept any version of up to the greatest version at that minor version level. So in semantic versioning, you have major, minor, patch. The second X, or sorry, the last X, is patch versions. So I basically say, I know there'll be no breaking changes in patch versions. That's by definition defined in semver. And I'm just going to accept any of those. But if there's anything greater than that, like a 0.2 for eyes, for example, not going to accept that, because there might be a breaking change in there, and I'm running this in production, and that could be really, really dangerous. But for something like colors, which has a ridiculously simple API, which is never going to change, and those major versions, or minor versions rather, probably won't affect the core API that I use, I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic there and say I'm going to accept anything up to a major version release. So just a little bit, Isaac talked about this earlier today. You really should just pop in and start playing with semver. It's really helpful. Really, package managers and package writers out there, you should know about this, and you should think about this when you're determining versions for your packages. There are 1,900 packages on NPM. I wonder how many of them are versioned correctly, considering the fact that like my 20 were not versioned right, and I've been trying to do it right for a year. So play with it, use it, love it. Let's have better versioning. Find the best tool for the job. So this is kind of a mini announcement. We're going to be putting this on all the projects that we maintain later this week. And so I think it was Paul Kerna who said earlier today that, beware the single module authors. The I'm just learning Node module authors. It's not bad. I'm really happy that you're learning Node. But just be aware that if that author disappears or decides they don't like Node and goes back to PHP, you're maintaining that. But anything that you see with this seal, we maintain. I stay up till 6 in the morning fixing. That's Eastern time. So, now you know where I am. Structure your code. This came up, I think, in MDE's talk. One of the great things about Node is that it doesn't enforce any code structure for you, but you really need to think about it. This is a pretty common template that I use for most of my libraries and applications. You've got some sort of tooling in your bin folder. You've got some sort of configuration per environment. You have some sort of lib, maybe some static files, tests. I do integration, testing. Sorry, Felix. And then, of course, any sort of submodules you have. There, of course, some people are starting to put things in node_modules as per NPM 1.0. That's something that's still kind of experimentation. Some people do it, I don't do it. It could be a good thing to do moving on, but he did just release that this week. Decide on a network architecture. And what do I mean by that? If you're running something that can run on one machine, you probably want to use cluster. And what that does is it uses shared file descriptors to basically open up a socket, pass that to the STDN of any child process. This has come up a few times today. Cluster seems to be the best implementation of it out there right now. Spark, obviously, was the predecessor, which still is a good example in code reading. RTFC, we're all here at a dev conference. The other one is to do some sort of proxying. And this is what we do at Node.js. This is an extremely simple round-robin proxy. And that's one of the great things about Node, because this request handler in the HTTP proxy.create server actually runs synchronously, right? So you can just pop it off and put it back on, and you can be assured that there is order here. So you're going to remove it and then always add it to the end. So there's no need to worry about any sort of threading or things like that. You just say, remove it, proxy to it, put it back on there, and just cycle that set of servers overall. Now, what if there was just some tool out there that did all of this for you? I mean, wouldn't that be great? There's more. So we have been working on Haibu for about a year now, and I'm pretty excited to announce that we are releasing it today. So what is it, right? It is an application server for Node.js that's based on the package.json format. And so let's run through a little demo. So essentially, it's two servers, right? You have basically the Haibu server, which I'm going to start up first after I do this. So that's going to run, and I'm not going to show you what port it's running on, so nobody tries and gets me over the network. Can everybody read this? Is that good? OK, good. Great. So what this does is that this will respond to incoming requests for a REST API. If anybody went to the CAST talk today, I think there's definitely some overlap there. But we're definitely focused on just Node and not supporting everything else. So that gives us some flexibility in that we can just say, we only support package.json formats. And so what would one of those look like? And so let's jump into an example. Is this? Oh, drat. I changed everything else except for this. Sorry. Basic? I don't even know another one. Classic. There we go. So here's a pretty simple package.json, right? It has some sort of repository. I think this is actually the simplest Node application on the planet if you go to it. But it has a good package.json with proper versions. So essentially, we're going to say, hey, now that I want the API client for Haibu on, oh, now you know my port, drat. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to start this application, right? Let's do that. Yes, OK. Yay, it spawned. OK. And so you can sort of see from this example that it spawns it using forever. So that means if it goes down, it's going to restart it and does all that process management for you. It spawns it on a unique port for that IP, so you always have things isolated. And then you can actually start this up again, right? So now I have 2 of these things running. Now I have 3 of these things running, all from the same call. And now that I have them running, I might actually want to access them. And to do that, I need to run the load balancer. And this uses a modified version of the very simple load balancer script that I showed you before. And this will all be released in about 9 minutes. So now the balancer is running. And as we can see, the domain of this particular application happens to be devjitsu. And what I have in my Etsy host file is that I have a bunch of devjitsu stuff set up. So I'm just going to hit one of those sites, and I'm going to see my app, right? Good stuff. But now I may want to, later on, stop my app. So I'm going to stop my app right now. And now it's stopped. Oh, maybe it's not. Do it live. And now it's started. So, oh. 3, 2, 1. File descriptor reload. Now it's stopped. Uses file watchers, so it takes a split second. It could easily be plugged out to use Redis and be much faster. So yeah, we just stopped a Node.js application and restarted it and did all that stuff. Little known fact in the Node community is that I actually wrote the programmatic support for NPM, or helped Isaac write it, I guess, since Isaac writes everything. So what this will do is actually install all of your NPM dependencies for you automatically, get the right versions. This is why I harp so much on the package.json dependencies, because if you don't have the right dependencies and you decide to start multiple ones of these over time on different machines, that is a really difficult problem to debug. And so I guess in closing, before I hit some questions, I just was really looking forward to doing this. So yeah, I've got one more slide, which is another one of my favorite lines. You know, why you no make questions? Trademark. Anybody? Cool. Man, that's great. No questions. I mean, that's. Oh, wait. Now I got one. Oh.
Is that load balancer doing round robin like the night one?
Yeah. It's all round robin. And this. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, is that load balancer doing round robin proxying? And the answer is yes. And so the thing about the stop request that came in, when you tell it to stop, it will stop all instances. It's not really refined enough to say, oh, I want to stop this one particular drone or that one particular drone. At Nodejitsu, we generally have multiple machines running, and we'll just say, oh, turn off that machine, which might have 2 or 3 processes running on it, and scale in that way per machine horizontally. How much each process uses? So this is actually a feature that I'm working on it forever for the next version, which is to just monitor things via the OS module, but that's not in there yet. So the question was, is there an option in Haibu for doing rolling restarts? So kind of the way, since I've got a few minutes left, let's just jump into the code. So essentially, the way I like to say about this, this project is that it all wraps this one function, which is the spawn function. And this does a bunch of stuff to figure out where your app is and install the dependencies and do all those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it just spawns this thing called the carapace. And it's fully pluggable. So I have a chroot plugin, which is a good example. Like sometimes you want to be in chroot, sometimes you don't, depending on who you are. And so plugins can say, oh, I want to spawn with these options. And these can actually be used by the carapace file. So because this is designed to spawn any Node application, not necessarily a server, that's not baked in. But one could easily write a cluster plugin that utilizes cluster for particular HTTP servers that does rolling restart. Cluster does rolling restart for you. So if you are going to be running a lot of HTTP servers, you should write that plugin, because I haven't had the time to yet, but I plan on it. All right. Anything else? Great. Thank you very much.